Who, me?
Yeah, you.
Hey, flying cars, right? Living in space habitats, cures for aging. 21st century hasn't delivered. I'm not happy with it.
Stop
What
it.
about you?
Stop it. Well, yeah, okay, it hasn't delivered. Yeah, I
It
want the
hasn't
flying
delivered.
cars, the hoverboards. Instead, we get.
None of that. I mean, look, it's partially delivered. We've got a bit of sci-fi stuff, like we've got video phones, we've got some kind of cloning. So it's not the end of the world. We've got some stuff. But look, I mean, what I'm confused by is the baby step advances. Like, what about nuclear powered aircraft?
In, was this on your list? You needed nuclear powered aircraft?
No, you got to figure it out. We've got nuclear powered boats, we've had nuclear powered electricity, we got submarines.
Yeah,
Why
yeah,
the
yeah.
fuck aren't there planes?
Okay.
So the idea of that started kicking around about 1944.
Oh,
People
yeah,
were
okay.
talking
All
about
right.
it.
Yeah, yeah. Cool.
The research began for reactor technologies to do this about 1946, around the middle.
Oh, okay.
I know, right? 1951, solid proposals to actively develop nuclearly propelled planes.
I just pause for a second here. Like
Sure.
I'm not against nukes, but one of the things about nuclear power is that uranium is inherently heavy. Like it's not one of your light fuels.
It's not
I mean,
light, no.
I know energy density. It actually is pretty good, but
It's not light though. No,
yeah,
that's
a
true.
nuclear reactor is a big thing.
They are. And as these guys found out, so in 52, there was a mob called Convair, not Con Air, not the famous Nicolas Cage best movies ever made. Convair, they were contracted to modify two B-36 planes, one for a ground test, the other for a flight test.
Okay. Wait, just point of order there. Why not one plane that would do ground test first and then flight test?
Well, you blow up the ground one, you need one up your sleeve.
I get it. I get it. But I just if you have blown up the ground one, do you go, okay, let's launch the next one?
Put the other one in the air.
I'm not the test pilot on that case. I mean,
It's like, what we do know, it didn't work on the ground, but we haven't tried it in the air.
maybe the problem was the lack of air around.
It wasn't bouncing enough.
No, I'm sorry, I'm not getting in the second one to go up in the air.
So these two nuclear-powered bombers were called the NB-36H or Peacemaker because they love an ironic title.
Yeah, okay. Yeah.
And as you kind of flagged, they needed a few modifications. Like replace the crew compartment and avionic cabin with an 11-ton nose section that was lined with lead and rubber to protect against reactor radiation.
I'm kind of imagining a plane that's sort of tipping forward. It's got 11 tons in the nose and it's dragging along the ground.
It's like, what are you going to put in? Oh, we need another ton of lead. That to change the rear internal bomb bay to house a 16-ton reactor. I know. This is a fucking big plane. Like these are big planes.
I get it. But what sort of tonnage do planes lift as it is? I know they lift a fair bit, but
17. I don't know.
But 11 tons of lead and 16 tons of reactor. We're getting fairly heavy here.
We're talking big ass planes, but they also made the cockpit glass. The transparent bits had to be 30 centimeters thick.
Mm-hmm.
The see-through bits.
Really?
Oh, and 9 water-filled shield container tanks in the fuselage to absorb any escaping radiation. But they look cool as hell. I mean, look at this.
Could they fit anything else in there?
Plane.
Oh, I mean, well, of course, it's
Look
radical.
how sci-fi that is.
Yeah, extra long wings and sort of extra pointy. Oh, I love that.
And weird little sort of 1950s space engines on them. I mean, they look cool.
Did they have to fly with a little friend? Like a little Batman to Robin, they always had a little buddy flying with them?
Kinda, yeah. And in fact, the test flight, so the reactor did not actually power the plane. They just wanted to test its feasibility if they could do it.
Okay, so could we get this up in the air, or is it too heavy
and
to
make
actually
the
fly?
reaction keep running on a moving platform?
That's so cool. That's so cool.
I know. And for each of the flights, they had a megawatt reactor. They winched it into the bomb bay. And then they ran 47 flights between 1955 and 57.
Oh, did they really?
Yeah, tests. And they had two friends. They had a radiation monitoring B-50 Super Fortress, which was the first model plane I ever made. And Jesus, I love that plane.
It's a cool name for a plane.
Oh, super.
Way better than Peacemaker.
Yes, it does what it says on the tin.
Super Fortress. I mean, it sounds like you're in the army. Like it's not Peacemaker.
No, it's it's unambiguous. They also had a C-119 flying boxcar.
Lower down the name list.
Yeah. Not
the flying boxcar. Boxcar sounds fun.
not fast though. It doesn't sound fast. I want it. Can you square it off a bit more? Just square it off. And this carried. It was a transport plane that carried paratroopers in case the other one crashed because radiation site, so they had to get down there and go, stay away, civilians.
That's cool. That's cool.
Radiation.
I get it. That's a nice test scenario that you carry your emergency wrapping all the time, ready to go. Oh, disaster scenario here.
Yep. And you need bouncers because to protect people. There were mixed results, to say the least. The nuclear-powered turbojet looked feasible, but there was heaps of technical challenges. And the biggest problem was building a reactor that was small enough to fit in the plane and still do the job.
So I know you're going to tell me this, but I'm kind of need to know, did it fly under nuclear steam?
And the program was cancelled in 1961.
Don't disappoint me.
I don't want to talk about that.
At least once. I just wanted at least once it to be under its own steam.
No, apparently not. But I don't want to talk about the planes because of what went around them. There was something else. There's heaps of other things they had to build to support them. So what I want to talk about is the biggest robot ever built.
Welcome.
Thank you.
To the Wholesome Show, the boxcar of science podcasts for people who sit up the back of the classroom.
In which we ask the dumb, less serious, or downright ridiculous questions so you, dear listener, do not have to.
The Wholesome Show is me, Will Grant.
And me, Dr. Roderick Griffin Lamberts.
I'm a doctor too. I'm a doctor too.
You are.
I just didn't say it.
You've got to say it.
I just didn't.
This is Dr. William John Grant. But before we continue, I think we need to say special happy birthdays. One to Mark Wahlberg. He's 49 today. Very excited. Former leader of Marky Mark and the Funky Bunch.
Yeah, yes, indeed. I think once you're the leader, you're always the leader unless you're deposed. Like in the US, you're always a president. He's always the leader of the Funky Bunch.
I'm Marky Mark and this is the Funky Bunch.
Okay, happy birthday, Marky Mark.
And more importantly, one of our biggest...
Can I just say, I know you're always meant to guess people's age under. If you'd have said guess Marky Mark's age, I probably would have gone 58. So
not 49.
No, not 49.
Do you know why? He's too fit.
I know. It's that waking up at 2 a.m. in the morning to do exercise. So
that's why I don't get too fit, because you look old. That should have screwed up. But it's also the birthday of probably our biggest fan, Kenny G.
Oh, really?
I know.
Please tell me Kenny G is going to build the biggest robot of all time.
Yes, and he's 119 years old, so that's pretty good. He doesn't look it, though. He only looks like an 80-year-old with heaps and heaps of work done. But, we don't want to let these moments go by unacknowledged, because these are important people.
Well, thank you very much. But we should also acknowledge our sponsors, the people who make this happen. The Australian National Centre for the Public Awareness of Science and Giant Robots.
And portable reactors.
Yeah, indeed. Show me. You show me any other university centre in Australia who does as much outreach work on portable nuclear reactors, except for maybe there are some. But
no, there's none. We're the winners. Not only in Australia, the world.
All right.
So I'm going to talk to you about robots.
Tell me.
A robot. So we're going to do the standard thing because, we're intellectuals. So, the origin of the word seems to be from Old Church Slavonic. Rabota.
Church Slavonic, as opposed to...
Old Church Slavonic.
Okay, is this different from, like, regular Slavonic, like street Slavonic? And workplace Slavonic and, like, white-collar Slavonic or something?
Yep. Old Borstal Slavonic, old library Slavonic, all different, it would seem. The Slavonics were a very intricate people.
Okay. Why did they need to talk about robots in church?
Well, rabota apparently means servitude or forced labor.
Okay.
And there are cognates in German, Russian, Polish, Czech, etc. So that's somehow related to Central European systems of serfdom. It first appeared in a Czech fella's novel, a guy called Karel Čapek, I don't know.
Čapek. I like that.
Čapek, 1921. And in his world, this is a play called Wholesom's Universal Robots. I don't think it was called that in Czech. It was probably with a different accent and the words would have been slightly variant. But apparently these look like humans, but they were made of, quote, chemical batter.
Chemical batter?
Yep, chemical batter.
That's not the first thing I would guess to make a robot. If you're inventing the whole class of science fiction element, I would go like wood or metal or...
Yep. Not a bowl with a whisk.
Batter. Not a batter.
Now we have a robot. Be my surf.
I mean, maybe my thinking has just been too shaped by 60s cartoons. So
how could it be too shaped by them?
I don't know, but I'm just admitting maybe I have been framed by this and I wasn't thinking the full diversity of what a robot could be made of batter.
It can be made out of batter, or at least originally was. The current definitions in the real world, though, get a bit debated, and a big part of the debate seems to be how much it needs to be an autonomous
definitions of a robot.
Definition and the extent to which it should be able to sense and manipulate its environment. So there's arguments about is it a robot or not? How much?
So what's a boundary here? Like what's something that some people say is a robot and some people say it isn't?
Well, we're going to get to one of those because the big one seems to be autonomous control. That's what it seems from my extensive reading over the last 17 years or few hours. But they were a lot less pedantic in the mid 20th century when we were trying to, the era of trying to build the nuclear plane, for example. Yep. So what they realized was they needed something that could service the planes if the shit hit. So if the reactor went boom, or if there'd been a nuke detonated in their zone of operation, they needed something that could service the planes. Because when you blow up a nuclear reactor full of uranium and stuff,
yes,
it's icky around it.
Yes.
Yeah.
And what you got to get? So they're inventing robots to go and clean it up, or is this while the plane is flying? They're thinking.
No, on the ground. Definitely on the ground. These are not flying robots. This is not a fantasy story, William.
Oh, okay.
Jesus Christ, man. Science related, not fantasy, science. So there were planes in the 50s, and I love this one. This is an image that was drawn up by a guy and put in Popular Mechanics in 1956. It was drawn up from a designer in Northrop Aviation, but never came to fruition. But damn, it looks cool.
Well, okay, slow down. What do we got here? Slow down. What do we got here? I don't know what it is.
So there's a plane above it and some dudes in a cutaway on some kind of...
I can see caterpillar tracks and I can see weird arm things and I can see some dudes in a box.
Yeah, so the weird arm things are the robot planned and dudes are in it roboting it. I know. It's spectacularly sci-fi.
Look, it looks cool, but I don't feel too enlightened about what a robot is in this world.
No, they didn't build that one anyway.
Okay, good.
So that one didn't happen. But the Beetle was built. And in 1962, Popular Science magazine dubbed it the biggest robot ever made. Now, the Beetle's big. It was built by Jared Industries in Detroit.
Jared Industries.
I know, right? Jared.
That's a made-up company that some stoner kids at college thought, Jared Industries, that's your company, man.
It could be me and a mate called Jeremy.
Oh, Jared. Yeah, look.
I know, right? It was built for an area of General Electric's nuclear materials and propulsion operation division. Good old GE, always doing nothing but really good things. And I love it. They refer to the Beetle as a mechanical terror designed for the Air Force Special Weapons Center.
I thought we were talking about them helping things, not mechanical terror.
Because we'll talk about what it was like in a moment, but yes, this is how it was described as in the magazine.
Look, it sounds like a bait and switch is all I'm saying. That in one page that's like, okay, they'll do the dirty, dangerous, and disgusting jobs that no one else would do. Also, it's a mechanical terror. Like that's a big switch.
Well, when we get to the specs, you'll realize why. Like all things, it could be used for good or evil.
Okay, fair enough.
So it was designed for the Air Force Special Weapons Center, and they were created to direct specialized organization stuff dealing with atomic and other unconventional weapons. Unconventional. Like sarcasm.
I don't know if
and
that's
atomic
a weapon.
weapons.
I don't know if that's a weapon.
Oh, it can be. Don't get me started. So they started in 1949. During the 50s, they had people in planes doing atmospheric nuclear tests in Nevada and in the Pacific, blowing up peaceful atolls, etc. They'd have biophysicists fly deliberately through clouds to determine radiation hazards. People used to do that. They'd fly through the cloud after explosions, which I think is wonderful. And this is
as in like not normal clouds, but mushroom clouds. There you go.
Yep. Let's fly through it and take measurements.
They didn't get some sort of put a balloon up or something like that, or drag a piece of string. I don't know.
Yeah, like wave a feather. I don't know, and see what sticks. They had engineers that launched sounding rockets so they could study effects of high altitude nuclear explosions.
Okay.
They also wanted to check the Van Allen radiation belt around the Earth, which had only recently been discovered. So they're curious about that. And they also, late 50s, they would simulate the effects of nuclear explosions to strengthen missile sites and aircraft against possible enemy attacks. So, this is the place, there's a natural place where they'd be curious about this robot. But they stopped working in 1976, so they stopped.
Okay.
Or that's what they tell us.
Yeah.
That's what they want us to think. So anyway, according to declassified Air Force reports, the work on the Beetle began in 59 and was completed by 1961.
Okay.
So that sounds fine.
Yeah.
So the robot was built. It was designed to service and maintain a fleet of atomic-powered Air Force bombers that would at times be, I love the quote, soaked in radiation.
So how much servicing and maintaining was it designed to do? Is this like the full, fills up your fuel, wipes your windshield, checks your oil,
offers you chewing gum,
loads your uranium? Or is it?
It was only if the shit had hit. So if something had gone boom, boom, and you couldn't send a person in, you'd send a Beetle. So it was not if you just kind of landed and went, check the tires and, kick the wheels. So it had to be pretty damn nuclear proof. It also had to be huge because the planes were freaking huge. They're really high off the ground, like many meters high. Big parts. Like we're talking about the 11-ton nose cones. It's big ass planes. So the Beetle also had to be huge. But also it had to, not only did it have to be huge enough to reach it and move things around, it had to be quite dexterous. So it had these two big pincer claws, which is why it was called
Wait. I'm just visualizing here. I'm starting to get a feeling for the size of this thing now. Giant pincer claws. It can move possibly multi-tonnage around. And okay, all right, this is getting cool.
This is big. I'll show you a pic and a tick. This is not a small craft. So it's called, the Beetle. This adorable little cute name for a thing that's fucking humongous with giant claws and can go through nuclear clouds of shit. It's fantastic. And so the Popular Science article from which I drew a lot of this stuff, I love it, from 62. I love the quote: "Fix an atomic engine, clean up spills of radioactivity, rescue H-bomb victims. That's what the Beetle is for." I'll take one.
I'm just going to say, being rescued, an H-bomb has just gone off nearby, and you're in that terrible zone where you're alive, but
rescue me.
But you're called a victim. Indeed. And along comes some giant robot with giant pincer claws.
I am here to help.
Do not resist.
Well, as we'll find out in a moment, they weren't quick either. So by the time they got to you,
of course not,
got you out, you're like, I'm But it's okay. Beetle is the first of a family of robots that will handle the hot jobs of the atomic age. See, don't you feel like?
I do. I'm burning to see this picture now. I want to know.
Sweet innocence. Well, let me describe it before I show it to you.
Okay, good.
The base looks like a tank because it's reworked from an Army M42 40mm gun carrier, which was also known as the Duster.
Okay, I'm just got to say, this again goes back to the sort of the 9-year-old, and you're to say, okay, flip through your picture books. Now you have to draw me a giant robot, and it's like, okay, well, on its base is going to be a tank. I'm going to use
start with a tank.
Why not? And it's like roller skates.
And I'm going to nail a dinosaur to it because dinosaur's fucking huge and rock. Boom, 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 boom. No problem. Then we're going to power it with a thing that works all the time, so you don't have to change the power because as if you wouldn't.
Hang on, is the Beetle atomic power?
We're being 9-year-olds, aren't we?
Oh, okay.
I mean, that's the way it worked. So it was nearly 6 meters long, nearly 4 meters wide, 3.4 meters high. This is the base, the tank, and weighed 77 tons.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I know, right? Powered by a 500 horsepower, I love it, supercharged Continental 6.
Well, I don't know what that is.
Car people would, maybe. And on a hard, flat surface, it could reach a top speed of somewhere between, are you ready? 8 and 10 miles an hour.
Well, that's not bad for that.
So that's like 80 to 1,000 kilometers an hour.
It does sound a little bit like I don't know how to make a story out of this, but there's
give it a go.
No. There's this fun story in World War II where Hitler got a bit mad, and he got mad with a lot of stuff.
Most fun story stuff.
But he kept saying, make bigger tanks, bigger. No matter what the German army built, he said, but I needed bigger. And
gross.
Yeah, the eventual size of the tanks they made were simply colossal, but they moved like, less than a mile an hour sort of thing.
Yeah. Oh, it's coming at me. What do? I don't know. I'll lie down, have a sleep, and then roll eventually.
Yeah, but if you're stuck still, like somehow you've got your foot caught in a railroad track or something like that, this thing has got you. You will eventually be destroyed.
Oh, yeah. If you utterly cannot move, then you will eventually be screwed. 2 to 3 years gone. Well, this thing, 8 to 10 miles an hour. Any faster, and then the vibrations would smash some of its more delicate equipment. It also had an electric drive other than the 500 horsepower supercharged blah, blah, blah. But when it had that on, it could go at 15 feet per second. What's that? 3 meters a second.
That's
A minute, sorry, minute.
A minute.
Second.
Okay, well, that's very different. That's very
second.
different.
Fuck yeah. No, 15 feet per minute. So it was slow. The trade-off was its power.
Yes.
Here's where we get strong. The pull in its arms was nearly 39,000 kilos. So, it's 39,000, or 3,800, or 38,555 kilos of pull.
You're still just quoting numbers to me. It's just numbers.
It could punch straight through a concrete wall.
Okay,
or it could tear the wall off a bunker. Literally grab it and tear it off.
Okay, now I'm feeling more qualitative power. That's
yeah. So the top section, the bit that wasn't the tank, was on 4 hydraulic pistons, and they could raise up and down.
Of course.
So when it was fully extended, it could get to about 8.5 meters above the ground, so it could reach the big planes. So here's one of the early pictures. I'll show you a better one later for different content. But that's the Beetle.
So where's this grabbers? Okay, so there's a grabber there.
You can kind of see them, and that big square you're seeing is the looking point, like a window.
So
we'll get to.
You're going to tell me about control. Okay.
I am going to tell you about control. So that's the Beetle. And the popular spiel, I love it, goes on. They call it a he, which is fun, because obviously it's a boy. To be fair, I'm guessing a lot of women are like, yeah, you boys.
I know. I feel like it's unnecessary to give it a gender.
Yeah, you could it. I don't think it's insulting anyone to call a mechanical object an it.
It's really not. I think it's troubled by it.
But I don't know. Maybe I just don't understand.
Okay.
So he could roll up to the atomic engine of a space rocket and delicately maneuver those 16-foot arms to make adjustments. Space rocket. Oh, yeah. Could replace a broken part in an atomic boiler of a power plant, so you could trundle it into a power plant, in theory. That's the popular spiel.
Yeah.
It could haul the fatally hot debris of a nuclear accident away to the burying ground. And possibly my favorite, if H-bombs struck, he could dash into the destruction zone to rescue injured people and scrape away the worst of the fallout dust.
I do like the idea that, you're stuck inside the fallout zone,
yeah.
and this very slow robot is coming in towards you. You can see it in the distance.
Dashing.
Yeah, dashing. Maybe a few hours it dashes towards you, and then a few hours later you gradually be grabbed in its pincer, and it's going back at this incredibly slow speed.
Don't worry, I'll get you out.
Did they give it a voice?
No. Well, kind of. You see, because the top section also had a cabin. And this is why people might argue whether it's a robot, because it had a pilot.
It's not a robot. It's an elaborate tank.
Yeah, they reckon it was, though. I know.
An
That's
elaborate tank.
Too. But they call it a robot. And who am I to argue with the past?
No, I feel ripped off. I feel, it's an achievement having these giant pincers that can rip a bunker in half. Not a robot. That's my definition.
But so what they say is a pilot could make it more versatile. So the implication was it could still do stuff without it, but I couldn't find anything that talked whether it did or didn't.
Well, no, doing stuff by being utterly still. That's That's
meditation
doing stuff.
Robot.
So it can meditate. Do a Zen pose by itself, put a pilot in, and then you get a whole range of things like fixing nuclear bunkers and stuff like that.
Yeah. So, this is why I think it's funny, but it's always referred to as a robot. Anywhere I found anything on it, robot.
I thought what I was going to guess is that it had maybe some sort of human control, but a long wire coming behind it. And so I was going to forgive that because at least, the humans aren't there, but the human is right there inside.
Well, we have robots, what they call robots, disposal robots and stuff are often, they're just remote drone controlled kind of things.
Certainly the early versions of that, yeah.
Yeah, and they argue whether that's a robot or not. But anyway, like accepting the 1960s, 50s, 60s definition. So there's a lead and steel cockpit. The pilot can, quote, work where no unarmored man could live in the deadly radiation that atomic energy, the most fearsome as well as the most promising invention of the century, works.
What sort of pay do you get being the pilot of this thing that goes into
probably shit all, I reckon. I'll describe the pilot. Don't you worry. We'll meet the pilot. It also needed some of the most elaborate engineering ever lavished upon any ground vehicle. So as you'd expect, given what it's got to do. So the cabin can turn around and it can move up and down on these 4 stainless steel hydraulic lifts. If there's a problem with any of the systems, there are 4 backup mechanisms for raising it and lowering it. So there's a hydraulic system, a battery-powered hydraulic pump, a hand pump at the operator's left armrest.
Hang on, I didn't hear. How much does the cabin weigh? I'm guessing it's a couple of tons or something like that. And you've got to hand pump this thing. It's going to take you
50. 50 tons. There was also, they were hand pump outside the cabin, you know, so the people could run into the dust of the H-bomb and...
No, you got to pump it down. Once you get out again, they'll pump you down.
Yeah, far out. I mean, props for having 4 redundancies, you know, or 3 redundancies in a regular system. Yes, a hand pump, the guy inside, wait till I describe the guy inside, or rather the space inside. So it's movement, as they say, precise but slow. The cabin weighed 50 tons. The walls are 30 centimetre thick lead, covered with about 1.5 centimetres of steel plates. I mean, that is not mucking around. And you've got to imagine the engineers, this must have been like the dream job. Like, how much? 30 centimetres. 30 centimetres of lead. I want it cast into a wall. And I want to put stainless steel around the edges. I mean, it's going to be beautiful. So this would keep a pilot shielded from pretty much everything except super intense blast. The glass, you could see that square in the front, was 60 centimetres thick.
Oh, wow.
Wow.
Is there anything left in the cabin? I mean, I didn't think the cabin was that big.
Next picture I show you in a moment will give you an indication.
Okay. 60 centimetre thick glass.
60.
Can you see anything through that?
Apparently, yeah. But there are other things which we will get to. And according to the magazine, it would cut down atomic rays by 3,000 times, which meant the operator could put in a full day's work where the radiation level was 3,000 Röntgens per hour.
Yeah.
So unshielded exposure to this level of radiation would probably kill someone in about 10 minutes. This is according to 1960s maths. So how many, as a comparison, how many Röntgen did Chernobyl spew out? This, of course, was not in the 1962.
Oh, I thought you were going to ask me. I thought this was a test right here.
Yeah, it is.
Well, I applaud you for knowing that. I feel like I should know every factual detail about Chernobyl. So the answer is very
yes,
300
per hour.
Yeah, and yeah, exactly.
So they reckon in the worst hit areas of the reactor building, it was probably about 20,000 Röntgens per hour.
So you can't drive this thing into the reactor building?
Not for long. Okay. I'm thinking if you're quick, which it isn't. But, you know, it wasn't designed with Chernobyl in mind because Chernobyl didn't happen until a bit later.
Okay.
Oh, no, they didn't have the future thing. So there was an entrance hatch over this thing, which is basically kind of like a cork. It was the only way in or out, but it weighed nearly 7,000 kilos. So you needed hydraulics to open it and close it. So the driver couldn't go, bugger it, I'm getting out.
No, you're in.
Yeah, once you're in, you're in.
Oh wow! That's a coffin for you. So there you go. Just to work on your deep down fear of being buried alive. So this can add my fear of it's not spontaneous human combustion, but deep down lots of
close enough.
Radiation burning. So you're driving this thing into a Chernobyl equivalent, and you get bogged somewhere. And that's it.
Yeah.
That's it. You're sort of stuck in a box for
Yeah, it's like, get out. I really can't. I can't get out because the lid alone weighs nearly 7,000 kilos.
And I can't crack the glass because that's 60 centimeters of glass.
That takes a lot of hitting. That'd be a very impressive effort. So the popular science writers went and visited the Beetle when they wrote this piece. And as they put it, the operator seat is no place for a guy with claustrophobia. It's eerily oppressive even when the hatch is wide open. In brackets, the guy says, I tried it. There's barely space to wiggle a foot. Standing or stretching is out of the question. And the only direct connection to the outside world is a zigzag kind of air intake, which apparently is okay in radiation. This is a shot from the magazine of the guy just sitting in there before the hatches drop down. So he basically looks like he dropped into a tube full of parts.
Yeah, great.
Yeah, like dropped into a piston.
Oh man.
Yeah.
Oh man. Look, and I get that there were a lot of people signing up to do weird jobs in the Cold War in the militaries, but wow, that's a tough one.
It'll be horrifying, like absolutely horrifying. The fact that you can't get out, there's no way in the world you could get out in theory, or probably in practice.
Did they give you suicide pills or something like that? I don't know.
No, you got some stuff. I mean, there's a 3-ton air conditioner.
Okay, that's all right.
3 tons. So it kept it between 22 and 24 degrees centigrade.
That's pleasant.
And 60% humidity. So that sounds delightful.
Very pleasant.
Comfy. And the reckons it can maintain that temperature if the outside temperature can go from minus 32 to 55 Celsius, and it will maintain that 22 to 24 inside. So it's lovely. 55 degrees. So pretty much a standard summer in Australia in a couple of years. Climate change, am I right? The pilot could talk to base with a radio, and there are two separate transmitters and receivers. There's a public address system, so get out of the way.
Yeah.
And a microphone so he could hear the engine. A microphone out front so he could actually hear the engine, so he couldn't hear it from within the cockpit.
Wow. Well, I guess that much lead. I mean, I feel like that much lead. It should, that's telling you something about how insulated you are. Like, I know that
you'd be worried if you could hear it, wouldn't you?
I know that sound waves and radiation travel quite differently. Yeah. But there's a bit in my mind that thinks, okay, I have the world blocked out now, and so
yeah. I think so. Like if you got in and you turned it on and you just blah, 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 and everything rattled, you'd be like, "You sure, fellas? I can drive right into that cloud."
Or you can feel like the leaf caught in the air conditioner, and you think, "How did the leaf get in there?" And it's like, yeah, I would be worried by that. So I like that.
It's true. Like, I don't want to be able to hear the outside world. In order to see out, there was quite a lot of stuff. So you had 2 pairs of binoculars on swinging mounts, so you could see out.
To hypnotize.
Totally
himself.
swinging.
Okay.
A kind of a periscope that could tilt and rotate.
Any car with a periscope is a better car. So
I can't believe my car doesn't.
I don't know why it's not a feature in more cars, but
sunroof. I have a sunroof. They're useless. A periscope.
No, sunroofs are quite nice, but a periscope would improve it.
Do you have a sunroof?
I do have a sunroof.
Do you ever use it?
You
could, exactly.
In winter, it's like I'm sitting in the conservatory while I'm stuck in traffic.
If you open up a sunroof in summer, you're going to get burnt to death. If it's windy, your magnificent mane will get blown around.
That's what you want? No, that's what you want. You want magnificent mane getting blown around.
When you pull up at the traffic lights, hi.
But again, periscope would be better.
It would be better. There's also a closed circuit TV, which sits between the pilot's legs. That's how I watch TV. I put the monitor down between my knees. It's the most comfortable position.
No, between legs isn't between knees. Like you would say between knees. Like if you're saying between legs, this is wedged up against your balls. Like this is coming in the thighal area. A lot closer. So
yeah, that's true. TV in the thigh ridge. There's a camera clipped to the cab, as they put it, like a pencil in a man's breast pocket, and it can be picked up and moved around by the mechanical arms. So there's a camera clipped to the outside, and he can use the arms to move the camera around.
Well, that's quite dexterous.
Oh, wait. There are 2 fixed cameras that point to the rear, so you can see what's going on behind, because obviously rear view mirrors not that.
Yeah. Rear view camera. We've got them. We like
them.
And
as they put it, yeah, well, and I have one now. I don't know how I reversed a car without a camera. I don't know how I did it. That's not true. I know how I reversed. I don't know how I reversed without hitting things.
Yeah, fair enough.
But they also, as they put it, it even included a few luxury accessories. Okay. A comfortable power-adjusted chair.
All right. Sure.
Yeah, sure. Shag on the walls.
Well, I get it. If you're doing a hard day's work of 8 hours in this thing, then I'm going to want it pretty comfortable.
I don't know. Psychologically, though, you can't comfort me. It had an oxygen bottle that could keep the pilot alive for up to 8 hours. So you can die slowly.
Not quite a comfort, more a necessity.
Yeah, I know. They call that luxury. And, of course, an ashtray and a lighter.
Seriously. Who is having a durry in this? I mean, maybe they're chain smoking. Sitting here, just you're driving a robot through Chernobyl or something like that. And you just chain. It's getting smoking in here.
When I drive through radiation, the first thing I want is a jeton.
So the size of you're in a box the size of a coffin, basically. Driving.
I think a coffin's more roomy, and you could actually stretch out in a coffin.
Okay, and you got a TV wedged between your legs, and you're driving through a nuclear wasteland, and all right.
Yeah. Oh fuck it, you might as well smoke. I mean, that's fine.
Yeah, I kind of want to be able to see.
I like it even comes with the lighter as well, though. You don't even have to bring your own lighter. I couldn't find a picture of it. I'm assuming it's nuclear powered or something.
There's a famous story. Again, another thing that I find these things and I think, how can I make this into a whole story?
Snippets.
Yeah, a snippet. Maybe we should do wholesome snippets. There is a moderately famous story of a US soldier who
I know that one.
Probably the only person who lit a cigarette off a nuke. So this was, I think it's one of the Bikini Atoll tests or something like that. So this is back in the era when they're atmospheric or above ground at least, and also in the era when they had people looking at them, check if it went off, boys, that kind of thing. Anyway, so he set up some sort of rig that had a magnifying glass pointed in the right direction, and then set his cigarette there with it, and so lit the cigarette off a nuke. So props. I mean, that's
so
cool.
many ways to get cancer there. That's awesome.
It really is. The most cancerous moment ever.
Yeah. He's sitting on a ball of radium just to make sure his nuts got done.
I just like the, let's live. Let's live for the moment. And that is doing that.
Oh no, I do applaud it. Speaking of living for the moment, so what kind of maniac would volunteer for the job of pilot?
Again, someone that's told to. The last person to step back?
Volunteer.
All right. Okay. In fairness,
actual volunteer, allegedly.
There's scenarios where volunteering to be a test pilot or volunteering to be a submarine. Things could be interesting.
It gets the ladies.
Maybe.
Oh, if anyone's going to know, it's me. I've volunteered for so many dangerous missions.
All right. So
you can tell.
So volunteers.
So it was, and I will quote the magazine, it was young, flamboyant Randall Scrapper, who comes from Indiana, but is always called Tex.
Well, I thought it was going to be Randy Scrapper, which sounds a little bit, anyway, Tex.
Sounds made up and or porn star name, yes. Randall Tex Scrapper. He is one of the most skillful of an elite corps of technicians, the professional manipulators.
Is he of jockey stature?
No, I mean, you can't really tell. Here's a shot of him. That's the only one I could find of him getting into the cockpit.
Okay.
That giant lump of crap above him, I think, is the lid.
He looks older than I...
He looks way older than I would have thought.
Didn't you describe him as a young guy?
That's what they called him. That photo makes him look like he's in his 60s.
It really does. It really does.
Yeah, he does. That could be radiation and cigars or something.
Maybe.
So specialists like him, they're basically repair guys. They take machines apart, put them back together, blah, blah, blah. But sophisticated machines. And in the Beetle, of course, the machines you're working on are too hot to touch.
Mm-hmm.
So it's all going to be done through the mechanical arms. And naturally, you don't have any feedback or feeling in those arms.
Oh, don't you?
No, they're stainless steel, electrically driven.
Everything it picks up, it crushes? Like just...
No, he gets quite good at it. I'll show you a photo later.
So he can see what the arms are picking up. So
he can see.
It's not just crush the victims. Oh, we have to rescue the victims. Crush. Not a victim anymore.
Or squash the bolt. Is that the same thing? It really isn't, Tex. We're going to need you to get back out there. So everything's done. They're 16-foot arms, I think they said. But they're very dexterous beasts. They have twists and turns. They got a shoulder, an upper arm, an elbow, a forearm, a wrist, and a hand. So they're quite sophisticated. They can spin around. So they're very much like...
Better than our arms, some might say.
Except they're two-fingered. So it's two-fingered claws.
Well, okay. Can't use a knife.
But you can easily snap them off and replace them with tools. So, you can be like your Leatherman of giant pseudo-robots.
Can it do it itself? Like, can it, while you're out there in the battlefield, can you...
I see no reason it couldn't.
Take one arm off and put on another?
I'm going to brazenly say yes.
Cool. That's great.
But my impression of everything I read about it is I don't see any reason you couldn't, given what else you could do. So you need, if you've got to unscrew a nut, you've got to be quite careful. It doesn't matter if you squash it necessarily, but you don't want to spill cans of radioactive material, etc.
Yeah,
so
sure.
you've got to be careful. And as they put it, working with the mechanical arms is like playing the nickel in the slot claw machine at an amusement park. The ones that just those hopeless.
Oh yeah, okay. Yeah,
I think it was in
Game of Chance. I think is the common name these days.
So you got a case, a glass case.
There's like a Pikachu doll or something like that. And
and a watch, fake Rolex, and you try and grab it and it can't hold on to anything.
And it's never been able to grab anything ever in the universe.
Yeah, just for a bit, just for long enough to lift it up about 3 inches.
I love that. I mean, that's just an art where they've made it just so that it can.
Well, they say it's a bit like that, and they say usually it takes unusual sensitivity and coordination and icily calm concentration. But this apparently is no biggie for Tex. He steadily chews gum and cigars, often both at once.
Choose the okay. All right.
Cigar and gum at the same time. Ooh.
Yeah, it's a salad. It's you gotta mix things up. Oh, okay.
But gum absorbs. They made this old smoke. But anyway, he they say possesses the supreme patience to devote 8 hours to removing one nut from a bolt. Now I don't know if that was tested.
I feel like something's going wrong if it's taking you 8 hours to get the nut off.
You do it with 16-foot manipulator arms and a 77-ton object with 60 centimeters of glass between you and it, a camera between your thighs.
I'm just saying that once you're there, once you're in the machine and once you've got your fingers on the nut, surely it's a couple of twists. Okay.
I would have thought maybe it's getting your fingers on there.
Yeah, maybe.
It's not easy to get in the finger the nut. Not easy. Tex says, speaking of this supreme patience, etc., I can do that because I turn my ears off. People are always watching, trying to help. A little to the right, they tell me. Well, it may be right. It may be right in their eyes, but to mine, it's the left. So I've taught myself to pay no mind. I don't even hear them.
Cool.
That's exactly how tech sounds.
Cool. That's his one trick, is don't listen to advice.
Yep. Because people say left, but it's their left, not mine. So that fucks it up. So don't listen to anyone.
That's great. That's great. I mean, he may be the best at piloting this thing there's ever been, but...
Well, to be fair, I think there's only ever been him.
Yeah, exactly.
But that said, so did it work well? Here's a great PR shot of how delicate it could be.
Can I just guess? Did it work well? You're going to, spoiler alert, tell me it was an utter failure that cost the US military $47 million, but it was never successfully used in any mission ever?
Utter is a very strong word. Look, it can pick up a lady.
Oh.
See? There she is. Look how happy she looks in the Beetle's claws.
She is just like...
Yeah. And what I worry about, for those of you who aren't watching the YouTube channel, and you might as well, this young model is being held by the upper arms between these two pincers. Now, it seems to me that she probably kind of put herself up there. I doubt she was lifted by it because it would probably rip the skin.
It would hurt.
Yeah. But there was also a demonstration in 62 where it went up to a carton of eggs, picked up a single egg and held it in its pincers without breaking it. And there is at least this picture of it. I don't know how you can see.
Okay.
There's a spoon in one side and an egg in the other.
All right. That's quite dexterous.
It's remarkable. So in theory, it could be, very, very good with that sort of thing.
And again, there's no feedback. This is just by eye.
Sight only.
Tex knows when to stop and not crush the egg. Okay.
Well, that's because he doesn't listen.
Indeed.
If you start listening, you're going to crush that egg.
No, I just think, 60 centimeters of glass is not super clear.
Yeah.
That's
well, to be fair, also the egg would be boiled because it's in a radiation zone. So
sure.
It wouldn't break as easily.
Don't eat eggs from radiation zones or, the dogs or anything like that.
Well, it depends how hungry you are. So anyway, the popular science, the author whose name I don't have here, and his chief photographer, Bill Morris, went along to see the Beetle when they wrote all these interesting stories and took photos. When they went to see it, it was just sitting on the hangar floor. And they said, first up, they couldn't start the engine. They said in the 4 days they were there, it operated seldom and then it limped more than it ran. There was difficulty degassing circuits. With the degassing circuit. A plug popped and the hydraulic fluid squirted out. And a dedicated engineer, Dutch boy-like, stuck his finger in the hole. Hang on, sir, we'll fix it. A diode blew, which immobilized one arm. A welder had dropped a tool onto the control chassis and that blew out an arm because of the diode.
This is not making me feel my guess was wrong.
It wasn't terribly wrong. But you said it would smash everything and you were wrong.
No, I didn't say that.
Your eyes did.
Fair enough.
The auxiliary generator popped out because it had trouble with the brush.
Of course, your auxiliary generator. Look, you're leaving it on the floor.
Well, you don't need the auxiliary. You've got the main one.
It popped out. That's another thing that auxiliary generators...
My apologies. I read that wrong. Pooped out.
Pooped out.
As in it went, heh. Not pooped as in...
okay, fair enough.
It got pooped. And it seemed, I love the quote here, it seemed that short circuits had their own short circuits. There's 650 kilometers-ish of wiring in there. So stuff could go wrong. Internal testing conducted by the Air Force was said basically there were constant mechanical failures and it took an impossibly high standard of maintenance to keep it in good working order.
Impossibly high standard of maintenance.
Yeah. That's fairly high.
That's good.
So your psychic powers are fairly strong.
Look, I'm going to forgive them. Because I know that this is experimental engineering. This is seeing what you can do. And I don't doubt that probably a lot of the insights that they learnt from this went on to other robotics programs, went on to other remote
you're an
control
upbeat guy.
No, I'm sure that it led to a lot of things. This idea that just because one thing wasn't able to go out and solve Chernobyl all on its own, sure.
Because it hadn't happened yet.
Yeah, but,
So they, when the atomic aircraft project back at the beginning there was cancelled in 61, the Beetle was basically orphaned. Like, what do we do? It cost the Air Force $1.5 million in 1950s dollars.
Yeah,
which is substantial.
Sure.
And they weren't sure what they were going to do with it because the damn nuclear wars never happened.
Yeah.
So one source said the U.S. military thought about using it to clean up debris caused by nuclear explosions. but it seems maybe they didn't see a lot of need for that. I don't know.
There weren't a lot of nuclear explosions that had debris, I think, that needed cleaning up at that point.
Not really. You put a wall around it and wait 3,000 years, don't you? Pretty much. Or wait for the seven-eyed deer to come hopping out and eat those as delicacy. But its biggest failing was I love the quote, it was utterly unsuitable for active duty. But the main reason might not be what you think. It had been designed as a maintenance platform which would operate out of Air Force bases to look after the planes when they'd come back. But without the planes, the only way they could use it was to actively deploy it. But to deploy something that weighed 77 tons,
too hard,
was that tall.
Yep.
To get the pilot in and out required hydraulic lifts so you could close the.
Yeah. It's going to work on base. Like that's what I was thinking before. This is the kind of platform that only works on a super flat surface. So this is not going into a disaster zone where you've got lots of rubble and stuff like that. So,
the rubbles, yep. So they really basically couldn't deploy it, and there was no need to have it at home either. So it didn't go so well. So back in the 60s, the need for machines of this type was so certain that the orphan, as they put it, was already fathering a whole family of newer robots. And they wanted to make newer ones, lighter ones that could be airlifted, et cetera, et cetera. They wanted to make them remote controlled. So they didn't need all the heavy radiation shielding. You didn't need room for a pilot.
Look, they weren't wrong. They weren't wrong. They didn't guess the exact scenario, but there were robots going. There's robots around bombs all the time. There's heaps of robots all over the world, obviously, but robots trying to defuse bombs. There's robots that went into Chernobyl. There's robots that went into Fukushima. So clearly, the idea of putting robots in to highly radioactive zones is an idea that's
not only radioactive. As you say, bomb destruction. Like one source was saying, in 2010 you could see the legacy in a robot that's called a Talon, which was in the Hurt Locker movie. But it's basically a little thing on tracks that goes in and disarms bombs.
Absolutely. And so just because the Beetle wasn't, hyper successful in its job doesn't mean the ideas didn't go.
I just love it was called the Beetle. So no one's really sure what happened to it. They don't know if it's still mouldering away somewhere. Like maybe it's sitting in the great big warehouse.
The Air Force warehouse.
Lost Ark of the Covenant.
Yeah, I was going to say that.
I'm too good for you. And look, if it was around, I'd love the idea of trying to play with it, except being trapped in that death tube would make me shit myself. So one of the luxuries would have to be a giant hose, because we're going to close the lid now. That'd be the end of me.
I could get in. I could get in.
It's a pity. They don't know where it ended up. I reckon that's a real shame. Or at least if someone does know, I couldn't find the source.
That's amazing. That's amazing that you could lose something like that.
I assume the people who were tasked with putting it away didn't recognize its significance.
I don't know. I thought records were what militaries love to do, but that's disappointing.
Well, maybe they consider it embarrassing. I don't know. I mean, that museum out on the edge of Washington, out of Dulles Airport, there, the Space Museum and Airplane Museum, where they got the space shuttle, etc. That would have been a great place for it. I mean, it doesn't fly, but who cares? It helped planes in theory. They can have a whole space shuttle as part of their display. They can fit the Beetle.
Yeah, maybe. I think you're being a bit too charitable. That's for victorious planes. I think there needs to be
like that stupid hover platform that the Germans tried that never worked. Strap a guy with a rifle to a thing that flies, flips you over and smashes your brains out.
Yeah, that's okay.
That's not really victory, is it?
I think. Look, as much as I love the Smithsonian Museum, I think that there would be a nice version that is for the loser planes that never quite solve their problem.
Oh no, you have the good on you champ wing.
Yeah,
at least you
like
gave
that.
it a go, slugger.
Like that.
Yeah, I'd be happy with that. I would love to see it live, and I mean, imagine how cool it would be to see someone driving it around and picking up an egg.
Yeah, that's beautiful. I love that.
So that part I thought was quite impressive. But yes, like, is it a robot? I agree with you. Like, I was looking for giant robots, and I found what everyone referred to as a giant robot, and it was early, but I feel like a robot, at the very least, is remote controlled. And they never said it wasn't.
Yeah, but here's the thing. This idea of autonomy, there's never been a robot that hasn't been designed by humans, programmed by humans, with all of its goals and directions given by humans. So it's not like there's some sort of mythical thing where there's a robot that has no human in the loop. There is a human somewhere, whether it's sitting in a cabin or a little bit further back going through a wire, or a little bit further back going through a computer, or through some code. What you're saying is
we're all connected, man.
I think deep down.
Us and the machines.
Yeah, there's no boundary, man. You can't have a boundary.
that's beautiful.
What makes us human? Who knows?
I didn't know this would
Who
be a
knows?
story. It would end up as a story about what makes us human. That's beautiful.
There you go. There's something for you.
I didn't know how to round it off, but you've made it. You've made it.
Well, I'll round it off by not telling you a story, but giving maybe a preview for a story I'll do one day. And it's a story from the 1960s, same sort of time, when there was a space race. And
I heard of that.
we know that the Soviets were very quick to get up into space, beat the US there. So the US changed the goalposts and said, it's not, we're not racing to get to space, mate. We're racing to get to the moon.
Yeah, space, nice one.
Yeah, we'll get to something solid. And so, we all know the result of the moon race, but
the moon hoax.
Yeah, no.
This is a science podcast.
I'll tell you a story. There's a nice story about a Soviet robot that may have got to the moon at an interesting time. So there you go.
I can't believe it. Can't we just roll into that one now? Come on, man.
I don't have the details. Maybe later.
Wikipedia. It's the only source
I got to find the name for it. It might have been called the Tractor, which I think is a great Soviet name for a robot to go to the moon.
But that's what they call everything. Like, what do you call your firstborn? The Tractor.
The Tractor. Oh,
how do you get to work? In my tractor.
You've been listening to The Wholesome Show. The Wholesome Show is me, Will Grant, and him who can't say his name at the end of the podcast, Rod Lamberts. The Wholesome Show is brought to you by
CPAS, the National Centre for the Public Awareness of Science, and Peacemaker Nuclear Aeroplanes.
Boxcars.
No, I'm upping us to the cool sci-fi plane.
Well, that's the biggest robot ever made. We're back next week, listener. See you soon.